What is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome to Week 8 of Tracking Trends in Fantasy Football. We're going to be going through player performances through the first 7 weeks of the season and find out who's trending in both the right and the wrong direction. This is going to continue to help us find those players in fantasy football who have the most consistent hit and miss rates. Obviously, the consistent hit rate guys are the ones that we really want to be focusing on starting on our fantasy football teams. Now, today we're going to go through the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. Now, you're going to be able to see the hit rates for each player as well as their average fantasy points per game through the first 7 weeks of the season. Now, obviously, fantasy points per game is more of a season-long number, where hit rates are calculated on a per-game basis, but I show you both of these numbers on purpose, because by doing it that way, you're able to see whether these players are a little bit more boom or bust, or just a lot more consistent. Because if we have a player who's averaging 16 fantasy points per game, but their hit rate is only 25%, that's pretty safe to say that that player has a super high ceiling, but they're a little bit more boom or bust. Now, if a player is averaging 16 fantasy points per game and their hit rate is 75%, that means they are a lot more consistent at hitting those higher numbers. Now, speaking of consistency, I don't know about you, but I need my daily coffee. I need it right when I wake up every single day. If I don't get it, I'm a little bit grumpy, I'm still tired, and I have no time for anyone's shit. Because you see, there are some types of coffee out there that are a little bit more fancy, the slow sipping type. You can lift the pinky if you want, but for me, it's about fueling my relentlessness. It's about waking the up and attacking the day. So if that's what you're looking for too, you need to get yourself some 1.01. The number one overall pick in coffee. All you got to do is head over to opzocoffee.com. That's 1.01coffee.com and get yourself a real bag of coffee. Now, links to everything are down below in the description, so be sure to check it out as soon as this video is over. But all right, now let's dive in and see how things are looking through the first 7 weeks of the season. If you've been watching football like I have, you see that there is a lot of ugly football each and every weekend that we're having to watch. Between injuries, bye weeks, studs who just can't get anything going, offenses that look horrible, we have a little bit of everything here on the year. But let's go ahead and start off at the quarterback position. Once again, let me reiterate, I'll go through this every single week in case we have a new viewer. Now, when we're going through the quarterback position, in order to be considered a hit or a miss, the number that I'm looking for is 18 points. Anything below that is a miss, that or above it is a hit. And because we like to start things off on a positive note, we'll start off with the hot quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, he's been the number one overall fantasy quarterback on the season, and then he just got back his number one wide receiver. He probably stays pretty hot. Jalen Hurts finally starting to turn it on a little bit in the passing game. Lamar Jackson, can he come back here after his bye week? He already did not practice on Monday, so there is a little bit of concern. Definitely a name we're paying attention to. How about Jackson Dart? Every week, I think a lot of people think that Jackson Dart is just a fluke. Well, his matchup is too tough, or his weapons are all hurt. But he has 10 total touchdowns in just 4 starts, and over the last 4 weeks, he is the quarterback 4 overall in fantasy football. There are so many 4s in that sentence. How can he not be up in the hot category? Dak Prescott continues to play well. Now that he has CeeDee Lamb back, the ceiling will be even higher. How about Drake May? All the off-season sleeper talk is really coming to fruition early on here in the season. He is 6th in the NFL in passing yards, 2nd in completion rate, and has 12 passing touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. Plus, he already has 200 yards rushing on the season, helping out that weekly floor just a little bit. Then Baker Mayfield, he struggled in week 7 on Monday Night Football. The overall Tampa Bay Bucks as an offense struggled. Now they'll be without Mike Evans more than likely remainder of the season. Josh Allen will be coming off his bye, and then Caleb Williams, he struggled in back-to-back weeks, but his upcoming schedule looks really good. He's got games going up against Baltimore, Cincinnati, the New York Giants, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh. He'll have a great opportunity to put together some decent passing games in those weeks. All right, now let's move down to the mid category. We have Daniel Jones first, and he really is one of the safer floors this season overall. He only has 1 game on the year with less than 13 fantasy points. Justin Herbert with Quentin Johnston back, he looked a lot better. That overall offense will continue to flow with so many pass-catching weapons. Matthew Stafford, no Puka, no problem. Devontae Adams just going to soak up 1-yard touchdowns all week long. Justin Fields, I really want to highlight Justin Fields because I think a lot of people don't know what to do with Justin Fields because he's scored over 25 fantasy points 3 times already this season. The problem is he's getting benched and playing horribly almost every other game. He may not even have a job at this point. He is definitely trending the wrong direction, and I will say this. If he is your quarterback in fantasy football and there is another quote-unquote safer floor option on waivers, I will make that swap 100% of the time. I would much rather throw a quarterback in that I know is going to get me 15, 16, 17 fantasy points at worst a week than worry about trying to find what weeks Justin Fields remembers how to play football to give me a ceiling game. Let that be someone else's headache. After that, we got Bo Nix. It's not every game he's going to be trailing by 30 points in the fourth quarter and have to sling it uncontrollably. However, we saw the ceiling in week 7. Trevor Lawrence. This offense is just weird, right? I mean, with Brian Thomas Jr. and his struggles, now he's injured. They use Parker Washington a ton. We did start to see a little bit more Travis Hunter. Does that continue after their bye week? Then we got Kyler Murray, who's currently dealing with an injury. Mac Jones, playing great football in San Francisco. And I know there are a lot of Brock Purdy truthers out there. I love Brock Purdy myself. But there needs to be an argument made that Mac Jones isn't much different than Brock Purdy. If you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know which one was the backup. Mac Jones is still playing pretty good football. Now, once Brock's back and healthy, we'll have to see how that works out. All right, now let's move down to the cold section where we got a few guys that maybe we didn't expect to be in the cold section. Aaron Rodgers, he's definitely trending up, though. He has found the fountain of youth. He's throwing more touchdowns now, really utilizing the tight end, if you know what I mean. Jordan Love, not overly needed in this offense. Josh Jacobs soaking up a lot of touchdowns. Really some inconsistencies in the passing game considering how many weapons they have each week. Matthew Golden still hasn't taken that leap forward. Then CJ Stroud, we saw him struggle Monday Night Football. Michael Penix, he's dealing with a potential foot injury. Does that keep him out of games? We do not know. If it does, I'm not overly concerned about Michael Penix as much from a fantasy perspective, but that would affect Drake London. Then we got another old guy, Joe Flacco. He's trending up in Cincinnati. With the way that he's targeting Jamar Chase, it gives him a safe floor each and every week. And don't forget, he also has T. Higgins. Now, after him, you see Jared Goff down here at the bottom. He's got a 29% hit rate, but he's averaging 17.2 fantasy points per game. He's a little bit more boom or bust. Why is that? It's because the running game soaks up so much of the scoring in this offense. Then Sam Darnold, he's coming off one of his worst games of the season, but it wasn't overall bad. He's still averaging 16 fantasy points per game. Then we know Bryce Young has the high ankle sprain. He could miss some time. Tua has struggled. Geno Smith has definitely struggled. Carson Wentz, how long does he have the starting job before J.J. McCarthy comes back? Spencer Rattler, not playing bad football. They just don't score touchdowns in New Orleans. They got Olave and Juwan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed and Alvin Kamara, and they can't find the end zone very much to really boost his floor. And then Cam Moore, Dylan Gabriel, 2 rookies, still have yet to score over 18 fantasy points in a game this season. But now let's transition to running backs. We'll start off on the hot side once again, just as a reminder, for running backs to be considered a hit or a miss, the cutoff is 10 fantasy points. There ain't no one on earth that's going to be disappointed if every one of their guys are hitting 10 fantasy points per week. So that's the cutoff for running backs. Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and Devon Achane at the top of this list because they have scored at least 10 fantasy points in all of their games this season. Josh Jacobs, he continues to find the end zone pretty regularly. The only time he didn't score 10 points, dude scored 9.9, so it's pretty freaking close. Jahmyr Gibbs is up there as well, not a surprise. How about Cam Skattebo, though? No one expected this kind of start to the season anyway for Scat. A lot of people maybe expected him to develop a role as the season progressed, but dude has come out of the gate super hot. He's had at least 90 total yards or a touchdown in every game this season with the exception of week 1. He's had 19 plus touches in 4 straight, and he's playing so hard they cannot take him off the field, and he will continue to get big time touches. Quinshon Judkins out there scoring touchdowns left and right. He is the offense for the Cleveland Browns. Jaylen Warren, I hope Arthur Smith stops these random splits in the backfield, because if he does, Jaylen Warren will remain hot and should be in everyone's lineup weekly. Do not screw this up, Arthur Smith. Because if you remember the game before last week, we saw Kenneth Gainwell get like 12 touches, Caleb Johnson was getting like 6 touches, and when you really dilute the backfield that much, it's hard for Jaylen Warren to continue his hot streak. But last week, all of a sudden, he dominated backfield touches, and if it stays that way, we'll be happy. Now, Javonte Williams up here as well. We all know he's been playing great. He's continuing to stay hot. J.K. Dobbins, really hard for him to get going in a game. They're down by 30, but he remains in the hot category. James Cook coming off the bye. DeAndre Swift. I loved him this offseason, and I got a lot of crap for it, and I still don't think he's getting the respect he deserves. He has over 300 total yards in just his last 2 games alone. And in this high-scoring offense, you know he's going to have plenty of touchdown opportunities each and every game. Is he a running back 1? No. Absolutely not. But he was probably drafted to be like, what, your RB3 on your roster? And to have your RB3 getting 300 total yards in just the last 2 weeks, probably should be pretty happy with that. Now, after that, we go down to Kyren Williams. Obviously, we're seeing more Blake Corum, but we saw more Blake Corum in week 7 because, once again, we had another blowout where the Rams were up by almost 30 points. The bigger concern to me in that game was they had 3 goal line opportunities that all went to Devontae Adams for 1-yard touchdowns and not to Kyren Williams to rack up on the ground. Now, after him, when we round out the hot category, it's Zach Charbonnet. And honestly, I don't understand the Seattle backfield. I really don't. I mean, it was Kenneth Walker's birthday in week 7, and they still gave all the goal line touches to Zach Charbonnet. It's just weird. Now, with that being said, Zach Charbonnet continues to score almost 10 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 9.5 on the season. Now, up until week 7, he was one of the worst running backs in the NFL when it comes to efficiency, but they're giving him all the touchdown opportunities. Like I said, it's just weird in Seattle. Like, what is their thing against Kenneth Walker? All right, now let's go down to the midsection here. Rico Dowdle, welcome back. Chuba Hubbard in week 7, still didn't matter. Rico went out and scored 10 fantasy points in a near 50-50 split. However, with that 50-50 split, we probably see him go back and forth, kind of be a little bit more boom or bust. Ashton Genty, obviously he struggled in a game. They got blown out against a tough run defense. Travis Etienne, really trending down at this point. The entire Jags offense kind of seems to be trending down at this point. Saquon Barkley can't trend anywhere. He can't trend up. He can't trend down. But you have to think that at some point, probably later on in the season, he's going to have a couple big games when the playoffs are right around the corner. Derrick Henry coming off the bye week. Hopefully Lamar can return and Derrick Henry can return to form. Now, after him is Jordan Mason, and Aaron Jones is coming back here super soon. That could eat into the production of Jordan Mason. Kamani Vidal, going to be hit or miss. He's not somebody we can rely upon for 18 fantasy points a game like we saw in his first start. David Montgomery, with the way that Jahmyr Gibbs is playing, Monty is almost an afterthought in this offense. Great running back, would thrive in other opportunities in the league where he would be the lead guy getting 20 touches a game, but the way that Jahmyr Gibbs is playing, it's really hard for Monty to do much more. Then we have the most hated running back in football. It's Kenneth Walker. He's obviously trending down because they just do not give him the football very frequently. At least all those high-value touches, right? They all seem to go the way of Zach Charbonnet. Breece Hall would benefit from a Justin Fields benching because right now he's pretty hit or miss. Rachaad White, a lot of people are hoping that Bucky is returning. Now, Rachaad White had a down week 7, but prior to that hadn't been bad. Once Bucky returns, though, Rachaad White probably falls down the list a little bit. Then we go down to Alvin Kamara. Once again, just no touchdowns in New Orleans. Ramondre Stevens' season is still, through 7 weeks of the season, by far the lead running back in New England, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. Now, with their commitment to him, there's an opportunity that he could trend up here once we get through the middle of the season. Chuba Hubbard coming back, and now he's got to deal with Rico Dowdle. Probably not a hot guy rest of season due to this just being a 50-50 split backfield. All right, down to the cold section. We got Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. Not a huge surprise. The running game in Houston can't do anything weekly. This one is a surprise, though. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt of the Washington Commanders, he's averaging 9.6 fantasy points per game, which on the surface doesn't sound that bad, but he's really got an opportunity the last 2 games. Big-time volume in the backfield, and he didn't do anything at all with it. But on top of that, he couldn't even do anything with it when all the top weapons were out, like Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin. It was his time to shine, and it just didn't happen. Now, I'm not saying he's going to suck the rest of the year, but the opportunity for him to trend hot is probably diminishing by the week. Not what we saw like with Cam Scatterbo, right? He got an opportunity, he ran with it figuratively and literally. JCM hasn't really done the same thing. Tony Pollard in a horrible Tennessee offense. Chase Brown, maybe there's a little bit of hope with Joe Flacco. Now, does Chase Brown all of a sudden turn it on and become one of the best fantasy running backs? Probably not, but he could definitely trend up here over the next few weeks, given the opportunity that Joe Flacco is presenting. Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, probably going to stay in the cold category because Brashard Smith is starting to turn it on here. RJ Harvey not getting a whole lot of volume in Denver. And then lastly, Travion Henderson. They hate him, apparently because of his pass protection. Now, I don't know, but maybe from an NFL coaching perspective, we should probably put more effort into teaching him pass pro if that's really the problem, because the guy is so electric with the football in his hands, he is light years better than Ramondre Stevenson. Either that or just design a few plays a week to get him the ball in space. But because they're not doing that, he probably stays in this cold category for quite a while. Which will then take us over to the wide receiver position. Same thing, a 10-point cutoff here, and there's quite a few hot wide receivers in the NFL. Right at the top, we know we got Jackson Smith and Jigba. Dude cannot be stopped by anyone at this point. Jordan Addison, a short sample size, right? Only 3 games, but with Carson Wentz at quarterback, it is clear that Jordan Addison is one of his favorite targets. I'm secretly hoping on the inside that J.J. McCarthy stays out a little bit longer. But after him, we got CeeDee Lamb. That's no surprise. George Pickens continued to put up 10 fantasy points with the return of CeeDee Lamb, which is a great sign as well. Now, after that, we got Puka. We expect him to be in this hot category. Hopefully, he can bounce back and get healthy here pretty soon. Quentin Johnston is back and healthy. He's back scoring fantasy points. Justin Jefferson, fairly consistent. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we know he's going to get peppered each week. Emeka Egbuka, a lot of people, myself included, did not expect for Egbuka to play in week 7. The fact that he played and we lost Mike Evans could be a huge boost to the volume rest of season to Emeka Egbuka, so hopefully he's a lot closer to 100% than a lot of people expected him to be. Devontae Adams just feasted off those 1-yard touchdowns. He's still a guy, though, that has that opportunity to stay hot, even with Puka there as well. Michael Pittman, he just benefited from a game without Josh Downs for sure. Cortland Sutton, been a little bit more boom or bust than we want this season. His floor games are just super bad. But the fact that we've only had 2 of them through 7 weeks, it's a positive sign. Garrett Wilson, he's injured right now. His quarterback play is horrible. Then we got Rome Odunze, who's had a couple down games here as of late. But there have been some big-time points that have been left on the field. Whether it's called back by penalties or whatever, there are still big days coming. I'm not overly concerned about Rome Odunze. If somebody wants to sell him, go out and buy him. Then we have Deebo Samuel. He's not 100% healthy. DK Metcalf is stuck in Arthur Smith hell. All he gets is like 5 targets a week, and if he doesn't score a touchdown, he doesn't help you out from a fantasy perspective. Luckily, he scored a lot of touchdowns, but the usage makes him really risky each week. All right, now down to the midsection. Jamar Chase. He is definitely trending up quickly. Anytime you get a wide receiver who gets over 20 targets in a week, he better be trending up because Joe Flacco is better than Jake Browning. Then we get Keenan Allen, kind of right here in the middle, right between Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, now Oronde Gadsden. It's going to be hard for all those guys to stay hot, obviously. Jalen Waddle, he's starting to trend down just due to the quarterback play of Tua Tagovailoa, and even if they do go away from Tua at some point, it doesn't get much better. Ladd McConkey right here fighting for targets in that offense. Romeo Doubs, same thing for him. So many weapons in Green Bay, he doesn't get consistent high-value volume. Zay Flowers, does he have Lamar Jackson? If he can get a healthy Lamar Jackson, he could make a run here second half of the season. Nico Collins was trending up and then suffered a concussion in week 7. I'm just hoping that doesn't derail the second half potential there. Chris Olave getting ridiculous volume, just cannot find the end zone consistently. However, is the best performer in New Orleans week in and week out. Devontae Smith, they're really starting to make a conscious effort at getting him the ball deeper down the field. If that stays, he will definitely trend up and trend up quickly because his points come in bunches. Then we got Wan'Dale Robinson. He's becoming the safe weekly play for Jackson Dart. He's kind of like entered Binky status in New York. Now, a lot of that has to do with the injury to Darius Slayton. No one else to really throw it to besides who? Lil Jordan Humphrey. Maybe a deep shot now and again to Jalen Hyatt, but Wan'Dale Robinson should be the safety blanket there each and every week. A.J. Brown, they're trying to get him going down the field as well. If that continues, he will trend up quickly. Marquise Hollywood Brown, going to be really touchdown dependent with the return of Rashee Rice. Then Kayshon Boutte, another guy, really dependent on that deep touchdown. Luckily, so far through 7 weeks, Drake May is delivering the cleanest deep balls in the NFL. Then Teteroa McMillan probably doesn't have Bryce Young. Does that help him with Andy Dalton? Potentially. Stephon Diggs is up next. So many weapons in New England they can beat you with weekly. He's not getting force-fed targets in that offense. That's kind of why he's a little bit more boomer bust. A little safer, though, in that mid category, averaging 9.3 fantasy points per game than Marvin Harrison Jr. Everything with Jacoby Brissett is a 50-50 ball down the sideline. I know a lot of people hate Kyler Murray, but if he can return, it does open up the potential for Marvin Harrison Jr., in my opinion, and then Tyquan Thornton, kind of a one-trick pony in this offense now. With Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy, Tyquan Thornton isn't going to be relied upon each and every week. Now, after him, we got the cold section. Xavier Leggett coming off his best game of the season in Week 7, but hasn't really shown that he can do that consistently. Now he has a different quarterback, more than likely in Andy Dalton. We'll have to see which direction he trends. Drake London was trending up quickly. Then, Week 7 happened. And for whatever reason, Michael Penix just didn't look his way as much. Then you add on top of that Michael Penix Jr. suffered a foot injury. Does that linger? Does he miss time? Because if it does, that could hurt the target share of Drake London. Now, after him, we got Khalil Shakir, Kendrick Bourne. Bourne's going to really suffer due to everybody getting healthier in San Francisco than Trey Tucker. Obviously, with no Brock Bowers, with no Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker still couldn't be that big of a thing. In an offense like Las Vegas, it's going to be really hard to trust him. He'll remain boom or bust. Brian Thomas Jr. just can't seem to catch the ball. Now he's not healthy again. It's a nightmare season for Brian Thomas Jr. Rashid Shaheed has had some solid games once again. Yes, no touchdowns in New Orleans, just to make sure you're paying attention. T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is going to start trending up once again as well. With the play of Joe Flacco and with the way that he absolutely just hammered the ball to Jamar Chase, that's going to force opposing defenses to really pay attention to Jamar Chase, which should leave more one-on-one coverage for T. Higgins here in the upcoming weeks. I think he can trend up. Then we got Troy Franklin, boomer bust, Jameson Williams. Have they just completely forgotten about Jameson Williams in Detroit? Him and Sam Laporta are an afterthought. It's Amon-Ross St. Brown, and it's the running game, and that's about it right now in Detroit. Marvin Mims, he'll be boomer bust, really reliant on that deep play. Alec Aomanor with no Calvin Ridley, he didn't do anything, and Cam Ward doesn't look well. Juwan Jennings isn't 100% healthy. Jacoby Myers was hoping he would get traded. Keon Coleman in Buffalo, really big play dependent. DJ Moore is basically droppable in fantasy football right now. They're not looking his way at all in Chicago. Josh Downs has an opportunity to trend up when he's healthy. They're starting to give him more and more volume each and every week, and if he can hover right around 6 to 7 targets, he has an opportunity to really boost that fantasy point per game number up to right around 10 and maybe get in that mid category. Matthew Golden still not getting consistent volume. And with all the potential he has, they're not making a conscious effort to force feed him the ball at all. Calvin Ridley is droppable at this point. Travis Hunter. And I know a lot of people are frustrated with Travis Hunter. A lot of people have dropped him already. But with the injury to Brian Thomas Jr. and with the involvement that he has seen in this offense over the last couple of games, Travis Hunter has an opportunity to trend up quickly as well. Now, they're going to be on the bye week, but coming out of the bye, do not be surprised if we see even more Travis Hunter. Then we have Cooper Kupp. JSN's just soaking everything up there, and Jerry Jeudy hasn't been fantasy startable all season long in Cleveland. Which means now we only go to the tight end position. The cutoff for tight ends a little bit different. It's 8 fantasy points. If it was 10, almost everyone would suck anyway, so we dropped it down to 8 fantasy points. Another one of those things where I think we could all agree. If our tight end is scoring 8 fantasy points per week, we probably don't hate life. Now, when we look at the hot category here, we got names like Jake Ferguson, Trey McBride, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid, and Dallas Goedert. All of these guys are averaging over 11 fantasy points per game, and all of them are hitting fairly consistently. It was great to see Jake Ferguson still put up over 10 fantasy points in the return game of CeeDee Lamb. But these are guys that more than likely are just locked into your fantasy lineups. It's not a huge surprise that they're starting off hot. After that, though, the wheels fall off. Because in the mid category, we start off with Travis Kelce, and you have to expect he's going to be needed less and less in this offense over the next few weeks. With the return of Rashee Rice and having Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, there's not a whole lot to go around for Travis Kelce, but that's kind of what their plan is. Because we've seen this in Kansas City before. When they have all of their weapons healthy on the outside, Travis Kelce will be used sparingly, but they really want to keep him fresh and healthy for another postseason run. Then we have Zach Ertz. Going back and forth from Jaden Daniels to Marcus Mariota is not ideal for him. AJ Barner had been one of the most consistent tight ends in football the first month of the season, and then all of a sudden I needed him to get 26 yards to win $2,100 on Underdog. and the dude went out and put up 7 yards. But don't worry, he got 2 yards rushing on a tush push. I would love to leave a few choice words here, but I'll go ahead and just move on to the next players. Juwan Johnson, once again, kind of hit or miss in that offense. The volume has dipped some there as well. Kyle Pitts could be trending up depending on the health of Michael Penix. Sam Laporta, an afterthought in Detroit. Dude just does not get much consistently. Super boomer. He is entering Mark Andrews territory. Now after him, we got a couple young guys. Theo Johnson, really who I still believe is the best tight end option in New York. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more Daniel Bellinger at times. Theo Johnson has the more long-term value in my opinion. Harold Fannin Jr., obviously, it was a bad weather game in Week 7. They didn't need to throw the ball. They were blowing out Miami, but Harold Fannin Jr. has consistently racked up some targets, and if David Njoku remains less than 100% healthy, his increased role could boost him up this list. And then Oronde Gadsden, he's definitely going to be trending up. He's had back-to-back games with at least 8 targets, but he is still in one of those offenses that's really hard to trust just due to how many weapons they have. Can we expect 160 yards each week like we saw in Week 7? No, absolutely not. But can we expect 8 fantasy points a game? A lot of weeks? Yeah, which means he could definitely trend up quickly, which takes us down to the cold section. Dalton Schultz, as of right now, seems like the most consistent option in the Houston passing game, and if Nico Collins were to miss some time, he gets a bump. Then Noah Fant. Really? Big play dependent in this offense, if I'm being completely honest, because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to soak up so much volume. However, with the injury to Mike Gesicki, there is an opportunity that Fant, as the season progresses with Joe Flacco, could see a few more targets per game, and we know he's ripping off yards in chunks. Then we got Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. They're both cold as of right now. The big plays down the field in New England going to like Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte, that's hurting Hunter Henry. For Jonnu Smith, it's because there's 3 tight ends there. Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth take away targets as well. Mason Taylor suffering from bad quarterback play. Cade Otton could definitely trend up here over the next few weeks now that we know that Mike Evans is going to be out probably remainder of the season and that Egbuka is not 100% healthy. Cade Otton could see increased targets and climb up this list for sure. Then Mark Andrews, David Njoku, and we know Njoku's not healthy. We know Mark Andrews is boomer bust. TJ Hawkinson in Minnesota really suffering from Jordan Addison being a thing. Then we get Pat Freiermuth. Evan Ingram hasn't looked bad the last few weeks, but really they're just looking the way of Troy Franklin too much to really make Evan Ingram that much of a thing. Then Tyler Higbee, didn't really see a huge bump with no Puka. Chigakonkwo, it's just the play of Cam Ward at this point. Now Tyler Lockett is just like, just let me out of here, right? It's a bad deal in Tennessee. And then lastly, Cole Kmet. With Colston Loveland back and healthy, it's going to be hard for him to get going as well. So there you have all the trends through 7 weeks of the NFL season. An NFL season that, if I do say so myself, is probably the ugliest football overall that I have seen in quite some time. But now that we've hit mid-season territory, this is a great time to identify some of these trends. If a player has a super high hit rate through 7 weeks, we should probably be putting more value into starting them on a weekly basis. Identify those boom or bust plays. If you're really chasing points on a week, then yeah, maybe we need to take a risk. But like I've said in numerous videos this season, this is going to be the year that a team that is below 500 makes the fantasy playoffs. We're trying to make smart choices. I don't care if I win by 1 point each week. We're trying to get to the fantasy playoffs and set ourselves up for a championship run.